I am Caroline, 42, and literally last weekend my rep as the family glue. Yeah, it totally backfired. The piece I'd been holding together, the one I worked my butt off to keep solid by footing the bill for my parents' retirement, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown at our so-called happy Christmas dinner planning. My father, the man who never misses a chance to remind me I'm just the bank, straight up demanded I uninvite my son Ethan from the holiday because his medical school acceptance was to a backup program. And when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You're tearing this family apart," my father yelled, with my mother and nephew staring like I'd just set the table on fire. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note, this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The spark hit me in the dim light of my parents' dining room, where I'd been summoned for what they called a family strategy session. I stood by the oak table, my hands gripping the back of a chair, the wood cool under my palms. Ethan, my 18-year-old, my pride, had just gotten into medical school. Not Harvard, sure, but a solid program that he'd fought tooth and nail for, juggling AP classes and late-night study sessions. I'd watched him pore over textbooks, his brow furrowed, highlighter smudged on his fingers, determined to prove himself. To me, that acceptance letter was a victory, a testament to his grit. But to my father, it was a punchline. I'd driven 3 hours to my parents' house in Connecticut, the late November air biting through my coat as I stepped onto their porch. The house smelled of my mother's lavender candles, the ones she lit to keep things civilized. My father sat at the head of the table, his glasses perched low, flipping through a stack of papers, bills I'd paid, naturally. My mother hovered near the kitchen doorway, her apron pristine, her smile tight. My nephew, Brandon, the family's golden boy, slouched in a chair, scrolling on his phone, his smirk as polished as his Ivy League degree. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Caroline," my father started, his voice clipped. "We need to talk about Ethan." I stiffened, my fingers tightening on the chair. He didn't look up, just kept shuffling those papers. "His little achievement," he said, the word dripping with disdain. "It's not up to our standards. We can't have him dragging down Christmas dinner with his second-rate news. Uninvite him." My stomach twisted. I glanced at my mother, hoping for a flicker of support, but she just adjusted her apron, avoiding my eyes. Brandon snorted, not even looking up from his phone. "Yeah, Aunt Caro, no offense, but a backup med school? Kinda embarrassing for the family brand." I felt the heat rise in my chest, my pulse hammering in my ears. Ethan, my kid who'd stayed up until 2 a.m. to ace his MCATs, a loser? I wanted to slam my fist on the table, to scream that I'd been carrying this family for years, paying their mortgage, their car loans, their damn cable bill, while they fawned over Brandon's every tweet. But I didn't. Not yet. My jaw clenched so hard it ached, and I forced a slow breath. "He's my son," I said, my voice low but steady. "He's coming to dinner." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's pen stopped mid-scrawl. My mother's hands froze on her apron. Brandon's thumb paused over his phone, his smirk faltering. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing I'd just drawn a line. They didn't expect it. For years I'd swallowed their slights, nodded along, paid their way. But calling Ethan a loser? That was the match that lit the fuse. I drove home that night, my hands tight on the steering wheel, the highway blurring through tears I refused to let fall. Ethan was at home, probably sprawled on the couch, oblivious to the storm brewing. I pictured his grin when he'd shown me the acceptance letter, his eyes bright with hope. No way was I letting them dim that. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew this wasn't just about dinner. It was about every slight, every dismissal, every time they'd made me feel like I wasn't enough. I wasn't just going to protect Ethan, I was going to make them regret crossing us. As I sat in my living room that night, the acceptance letter from Ethan's med school still clutched in my hand like a talisman. My mind drifted back to the patterns that had shaped us into this mess. It wasn't just about that one cruel demand from my father. It was a lifetime of being invisible, of pouring everything into this family only to watch them celebrate everyone but me and mine. I stared at the flickering TV screen, not really seeing the holiday movie playing, my thumb tracing the edge of the paper. The house was quiet, Ethan asleep upstairs, and in that silence the memories flooded in, sharp and unrelenting. I remembered one Christmas Eve from about 10 years ago, when I was 32, freshly divorced and scraping by, yet still the one holding it all together. That night stood out like a scar, the moment I first truly saw the favoritism for what it was. A deliberate choice to lift up my brother's son, Brandon, while shoving me and Ethan into the shadows. It was at my parents' house, the same dining room with its polished oak table and lavender candles masking the tension. Snow fell softly outside the windows, blanketing the yard in white, but inside, the air was thick with forced cheer. I'd driven through a storm to get there, my old sedan slipping on icy roads, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Ethan, just 8 then, sat in the back, chattering about his school project, a diorama of the solar system he'd built from scratch, complete with painted styrofoam planets and LED lights he'd wired himself. He was so proud, his little face beaming as he described how he'd stayed up late gluing stars. I'd helped him, of course, sacrificing sleep after long shifts at my accounting job, but to me, it was worth it. "Mom, Grandpa's gonna love it," he'd said, hugging the box protectively. We arrived late, the door creaking open to laughter from the living room. My parents greeted us with quick hugs, my mother's arms loose, my father's pat on the back perfunctory. Brandon, 12 at the time, was the center of it all, perched on the couch with a new gadget in hand, some expensive drone my brother had bought him. My brother, Mark, lounged nearby, beer in hand, bragging about Brandon's latest soccer trophy. "Kid's a natural," Mark said, ruffling Brandon's hair. "Scored the winning goal last week. Colleges are already scouting." My father nodded approvingly, his eyes lighting up in a way they never did for me. "That's my boy. Future star right here." I set Ethan's diorama on the coffee table, nudging him forward. "Show them what you made, sweetie." Ethan unfolded it carefully, his small hands steady despite the excitement. The planet spun gently under the lights, a tiny motor whirring. "I learned about orbits and everything," he explained, pointing to Jupiter. "This one has rings. Wait, no, that's Saturn." He giggled, correcting himself. I watched my family's reactions, hoping for that spark of pride. My mother glanced over, her smile polite but brief. "That's nice, dear." My father barely looked up from his conversation with Mark. "Uh-huh. Good job, kid." Brandon smirked, leaning in. "Kinda basic, though. We did that in like 3rd grade." Mark chuckled, and the room moved on, the drone buzzing to life as Brandon demonstrated its flips and turns. Cheers erupted, my father clapping, my mother snapping photos. Ethan's shoulders slumped, his fingers fiddling with the diorama's edge, and I felt a pang in my chest, sharp as a knife. I pulled him aside to the kitchen, kneeling to his level, my hands on his arms. "It's amazing, Ethan, I'm so proud." But inside, anger simmered. I'd just wired my parents another $2,000 that month for their roof repair, dipping into my savings, skipping my own bills. Yet here we were, invisible. As the evening wore on, the gifts piled up under the tree, Brandon unwrapping a new bike, whoops of joy filling the room. Ethan got a generic toy set from the dollar store, something my mother probably grabbed last minute. I forced a smile, clenching my jaw, my nails digging into my palms. Later, in the guest room, Ethan asleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling cracks. Why did they fawn over Brandon? Because he fit their image, athletic, outgoing, the golden boy who posted perfect selfies online. Me, I was the reliable one, the check writer but never the star, and Ethan, by extension, was just an afterthought. That memory looped in my head now, 10 years later, as I folded Ethan's letter and set it on the side table. My fingers trembled slightly, not from cold but from the realization hitting harder. It wasn't isolated. Flash forward a few years, my promotion at work, the one that let me fully support my parents after Dad's retirement. I'd called to share, voice bubbling with excitement. "Caroline, that's fine," my father had said, distracted. "But did you hear? Brandon got into Yale, early decision." The conversation shifted, my achievement swallowed whole. Or Ethan's high school valedictorian speech, ignored in favor of Brandon's viral TikTok about his entrepreneurial hustle, some dropshipping scheme that made him pocket change. My nephew, always amplified online, mocking anything less than elite. I paced my living room now, the carpet soft under my socks, stopping to glance at photos on the mantel. Us at Ethan's graduation. Smiles genuine but laced with the weight of exclusion. The favoritism wasn't subtle anymore. It was a system. Brandon the heir, Ethan the outsider, and me, the ATM they kicked when it didn't dispense fast enough. I sank into the couch, pulling a blanket over my lap, the fabric rough against my skin. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Think about what your father said, family first." I scoffed, deleting it. No more. That history of invisibility? It ends here. But how? The idea flickered, tentative but growing. Expose it all, let the other guests see the truth. My heart raced at the thought, a mix of fear and thrill. I wasn't just recalling pain, I was forging a plan from it. That flickering idea took root in the quiet of my living room. The blanket still draped over my legs as I stared at the blank TV screen, the remote forgotten in my lap. My phone lay on the cushion beside me, screen dark but my mind buzzed like a hive. Expose it all. Tell the other guests about Dad's cruel words, about Brandon's mocking post that I knew was coming because he always broadcasted his smugness online. It wasn't a grand scheme yet, just a seed, but as I sat there, fingers absently twisting the blanket's fringe, the aha hit me like a jolt. Why keep their toxicity hidden? For years, I'd been the silent supporter, swallowing barbs to preserve some illusion of family harmony. But harmony for who? Not for me, not for Ethan. This was the moment, the precise instant when endurance cracked into action. I straightened up, the couch creaking under me, and reached for my phone, thumbs hovering over the contacts list. No more secrets buried under politeness. I was building something new. A retaliation that would strip away their facade. It started small, that internal shift, as I scrolled through my messages, landing on the group chat for the extended family Christmas invites. There were aunts, uncles, cousins, about 24 guests my parents prided themselves on hosting every year, their prized gathering where they played perfect hosts on my dime. I'd funded the caterers, the decorations, even the flights for out-of-towners. My finger tapped the screen lightly, opening the chat, the blue light casting shadows on my face. The last message was from Mom, all cheery emojis about the menu. I hesitated, heart thumping against my ribs, a bead of sweat forming at my temple despite the cool room. Was this really me? Caroline, the peacekeeper, about to ignite a fire? But then I thought of Ethan's face if he heard Grandpa's words, the way his confidence could shatter like glass under a heel. No. I typed a draft. "Hey everyone, just wanted to share something before dinner." Delete. Too vague. I set the phone down, stood up, paced to the window. Outside, streetlights glowed orange, a neighbor's dog barking faintly. My reflection stared back, eyes tired but sharpening with resolve. The struggle built inside me, wave after wave, as I leaned against the sill, palms pressing into the cold wood. Part of me screamed to stop. Years of conditioning, the voice saying, "Family first, don't rock the boat." I'd endured so much, Dad's demands for money phrased as loans that never got repaid, Mom's passive nods, Brandon's eye rolls whenever Ethan spoke. But the other part, the raw, fed-up core, pushed back. I clenched my fists, nails biting into skin, remembering the exact sting of invisibility. This plan wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was justice. A way to break the cycle before it crushed Ethan too. I returned to the couch, picked up the phone again, my breathing shallow. What if they all sided with Dad? What if I ended up alone? Doubt clawed at me, making my thumbs shake as I typed another draft. I overheard Dad call Ethan a loser because his med school isn't elite enough. He's demanding I uninvite him from Christmas. Thought you should know the kind of family vibe we're dealing with. Too accusatory? I backspaced, rephrased, the cursor blinking mockingly. Hours slipped by. Well, it felt like hours, but the clock showed only 30 minutes. As I refined the message, each word a brick in this secret structure I was erecting. I added details, the backup school jab, Brandon's reinforcement, my years of financial support. Not to beg pity, but to paint the truth plainly. My stomach growled, ignored. I hadn't eaten since lunch, but adrenaline fueled me now. I imagined their reactions. Aunt Lisa, who always hugged Ethan extra tight, might cancel. Uncle Tom, fair-minded, could call Dad out. The power in that, the shift from hidden hurt to open accountability, thrilled and terrified me. I stood again, walking to the kitchen for water, the faucet running cold over my wrists to steady my nerves. As I sipped from the glass, lips numb against the rim, the plan solidified. This wasn't impulsive. It was the culmination of silent battles. I'd send it tomorrow, after confirming Brandon's inevitable online mockery. He couldn't resist posting about family standards with a veiled dig at Ethan. The intense struggle peaked when I sat back down, phone in hand, and hit send on a test message to myself. Reading it back, my chest tightened, breaths coming quick and short. Was this betrayal? No, the betrayal was theirs, years of favoritism I'd enabled by staying quiet. I deleted the test, rewrote once more, fingers flying now with purpose. The message grew. Factual, unemotional, letting the cruelty speak for itself. Hi all, I need to share something difficult. Last night, Dad called Ethan a loser for getting into a backup med school and wants him uninvited from Christmas. Brandon echoed it online. After supporting Mom and Dad financially for years, this hurts deeply. I'm inviting Ethan anyway, but wanted transparency. There. Hidden success in its simplicity. It would spread like ripples, guests deciding for themselves. I saved it as a draft, set the phone face down, the screen's glow fading. My hands trembled slightly as I rubbed my eyes, exhaustion creeping in but laced with triumph. This secret project, this plan I'd built in solitude felt massive already. No more enduring in shadows, tomorrow I'd launch it, watch the toxicity unravel. But the struggle wasn't over yet. Doubt lingered as I climbed the stairs to bed, steps creaking softly. In the hallway I paused outside Ethan's door, hand on the knob but not turning it. He didn't need to know yet, this was my burden to lift first. Slipping into my room, I slid under the covers, the sheets cool against my skin, mind racing. What if Mom called, pleading? I'd hang up. If Dad raged, let him. The eventual success hummed in my veins, the freedom of no longer carrying their weight alone. As sleep edged in, fragmented and restless, I visualized the cancellations pouring in, the dinner table sparse, their prized event ruined. It wasn't just exposure, it was reclamation. My eyelids fluttered, body heavy, but inside the spark had become a flame. This decision, forged in this solitary night, would change everything. No turning back now. Morning light filtered through my bedroom curtains, casting striped shadows on the comforter as I lay there, eyes open but unfocused, the remnants of restless dreams clinging like fog. The plan I'd crafted last night pulsed in my mind, no longer a fragile seed but a sturdy framework, ready to deploy. I swung my legs over the bed's edge, feet meeting the cool hardwood floor, toes curling against the chill. Today was the eve of Christmas dinner, tomorrow the big event, but preparations loomed like a shadow, my parents' texts already buzzing on my nightstand. I picked up my phone, screen lighting my face, thumb swiping through messages, Mom listing last-minute groceries I'd need to buy, Dad reminding me to confirm the caterer payment. My jaw tightened, teeth grinding softly as I set it down without replying. No more automatic yeses. Today I'd go through the motions, but with eyes wide open, resolve hardening like concrete setting in the sun. I padded to the bathroom, the tile cold underfoot, splashing water on my face from the sink, droplets clinging to my lashes. Staring in the mirror, I saw the lines around my eyes, etched from years of this dance. Supporting, enduring, fading back. But today felt different. That spark from overhearing Dad's cruelty had evolved into a steady burn. Ethan stirred in his room as I passed by, the door ajar, his blankets rumpled from sleep. I peeked in, watching his chest rise and fall, his face peaceful. 18 now, on the cusp of his future, and they wanted to crush it? My fists clenched at my sides, nails pressing into palms, a quiet vow forming. Not on my watch. Downstairs I brewed coffee, the machine gurgling, steam rising in curls. The kitchen smelled of yesterday's takeout, but I ignored the mess, focusing instead on the draft message still saved in my phone. I pulled it up while stirring cream into my mug, the spoon clinking against ceramic. Reading it again, my pulse quickened. Factual, damning, a mirror to their ugliness. I'd send it this afternoon, after the preparations, letting it simmer overnight before the dinner implosion. The day unfolded in tense rituals, starting with the drive to the store. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening as traffic crawled, holiday shoppers honking impatiently. At the grocery, carts clanged, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I loaded up on Mom's list: turkey, cranberries, wine, my cartwheels squeaking on the linoleum. Each item felt like a prop in their charade, funded by me yet again. At the checkout, the cashier's cheerful "Happy Holidays" met my forced smile, lips stretching thin as I swiped my card, the beep confirming another drain on my account. Back home, I unpacked bags on the counter, plastic rustling, stacking cans with deliberate thuds. Ethan wandered in, hair tousled, grabbing a banana. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, peeling it slowly, eyes searching mine. I paused, hand on a bag of potatoes, debating how much to reveal. "Just family stuff," I said, voice even, turning to rinse veggies under the faucet, water rushing cold over my fingers. He nodded, but his brow furrowed, banana forgotten mid-bite. I wanted to hug him, spill everything, but held back. This was my fight first. Afternoon brought the reluctant trip to my parents' house, the 3-hour drive a gauntlet of churning thoughts. The highway blurred past, radio humming low, my hands shifting gears with mechanical precision. Flurries started, wipers swishing intermittently, smearing the windshield. I rehearsed the message in my head, words sharpening like a blade. Arriving, I parked in the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled, snowflakes melting on the hood. The house loomed, lights twinkling in windows, a facade of warmth. I grabbed the grocery bags, handles cutting into my palms, trudging up the porch steps, boots crunching salt. Mom opened the door, apron dusted with flour, her hug quick and perfunctory. "About time," she said, taking a bag, her fingers brushing mine coldly. Inside, the air thick with baking smells, pies cooling on racks, oven humming. Dad sat in his recliner, newspaper crinkling as he folded it, glasses slipping down his nose. "Did you get the good wine?" he asked, not looking up. I set bags down heavily on the counter, a jar clinking. "Yes," I replied shortly, unpacking with brisk movements, cans thudding into cabinets. The preparations dragged, a series of micro-tensions building my resolve. Mom directed me to set the table, her voice clipped. "Napkins folded properly, Caroline?" I smoothed linens over the oak surface, fingers lingering on the grain, remembering last night's overheard demand echoing here. Brandon lounged nearby, phone in hand, thumbs tapping rapidly. I caught a glimpse of his screen, a draft post mocking subpar achievements, clearly aimed at Ethan. My stomach knotted, breath hitching as I straightened silverware, tines aligning perfectly. "Everything okay with Ethan?" Dad asked casually from his chair, page turning with a rustle. I froze, fork in hand, heat flushing my cheeks. "He's fine," I said, voice steady but edged, placing the utensil down with a soft click. Mom shot me a glance, eyebrows raised, but said nothing, turning back to stir a pot, spoon scraping metal. The silence stretched, broken only by the clock ticking on the wall, each second amplifying my internal fire. I moved to hang garlands, ladder creaking under me, pins pricking my fingers as I secured them. Blood beaded on my thumb, I sucked it away, tasting metallic resolve. As evening fell, shadows lengthening across the yard visible through windows, I stepped outside for air, coat zipped tight, breath fogging. The cold bit my cheeks, but it cleared my head. Leaning on the porch rail, wood splintery under elbows, I pulled out my phone. The draft message glowing. No more reluctance, this was Judgment's Eve, and tomorrow's dinner would be their reckoning. I hit send to the group chat, watching the delivered notifications tick in, one by one. My heart pounded, a mix of dread and exhilaration, fingers numb from cold as I pocketed the device. Back inside, preparations wrapped up, Mom wiping counters with brisk swipes, Dad dozing lightly. I said goodbyes curtly, hugs avoided, door clicking shut behind me. Driving home, headlights piercing the dark, flurries swirling, my resolve solidified. The gathering they prized, I just set the stage for its ruin. Ethan waited at home, and for the first time, peace flickered. Not from their approval, but from my stand. The drive home melted into a blur of dark roads and swirling snow, my headlights cutting through the night like accusations I couldn't voice yet. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the flurries had thickened into a steady fall, blanketing the world in quiet white. Ethan was in the living room, feet up on the coffee table, scrolling through his phone with that easy grin of his. "Hey Mom, how'd it go?" he asked, setting it aside as I shrugged off my coat. Snowflakes melting on the entry rug. I forced a smile, hanging the coat with deliberate slowness, the hanger clinking against the closet rod. "Same old," I said, keeping my voice light, but inside, the sent message burned like a secret coal. He didn't press, just nodded and offered me a mug of hot chocolate he'd made, marshmallows floating on top, steam curling up. I took it, fingers wrapping around the warmth, sinking onto the couch beside him. We watched some mindless TV, laughter from the screen filling the silence, but my mind raced ahead to tomorrow's dinner. The gauntlet awaited, But this time, I wasn't walking in unarmed. Christmas morning dawned crisp and bright, sunlight glinting off the fresh snow like a false promise. I woke early, the house still, Ethan's door closed upstairs. In the kitchen I made coffee, the pot gurgling as I stared out the window at the untouched yard. My phone buzzed sporadically, notifications from the group chat, responses trickling in. Aunt Lisa, that's awful Caroline, we'll talk. Uncle Tom, unbelievable. Let me know if you need anything. A few cancellations already, polite but firm. My heart thudded with a mix of vindication and nerves, spoon stirring sugar into my cup with a soft clink. I didn't reply, just sipped, the bitterness matching my mood. Ethan emerged later, hair messy, excited about the day despite everything. We exchanged small gifts, a new stethoscope for him, a scarf for me, his hug tight, genuine. Thanks Mom, can't wait for dinner. I nodded, throat tight, helping him pack his bag for the overnight stay. As we loaded the car, snow crunching under tires, I gripped the wheel, resolve stealing me. This wasn't just arrival, it was entering the lion's den. The drive to my parents felt eternal, radio carols mocking the tension in my chest. Ethan chatted about med school classes, his hands gesturing animatedly, but I caught glimpses of my phone lighting up with more chat pings. By arrival, half the guests had bowed out, illness, weather, vague excuses, but the truth hung unspoken. I parked behind Brandon's flashy SUV, engine idling a moment as I breathed deep, exhaling fog on the window. Ready? Ethan asked, unbuckling. I squeezed his hand, brief but firm. Always. We trudged up the path, boots sinking into snow, arms laden with wrapped pies I'd baked that morning, crust still warm through foil. Mom opened the door, her smile strained, eyes darting past us to the empty driveway. You're here, she said, voice pitched high, taking a pie with hands that trembled slightly. The house smelled of roasting turkey and pine from the tree, lights twinkling falsely cheerful. Dad stood in the foyer, arms crossed, his frown deepening as he eyed Ethan. Come in then, he grunted, turning away without a hug. Brandon lounged against the banister, phone in hand, smirking as we shed coats. Aunt Caro, Ethan, glad you made it through the backup route, he said, air quotes visible, his laugh sharp. I felt Ethan stiffen beside me, his jacket zipper catching as he hung it. My nails dug into my palms, but I kept my face neutral, ushering Ethan toward the living room. The initial barrage hit like drips turning to a downpour, relatives milling about with wine glasses, conversations halting as we entered. Aunt Rita, Mom's sister, approached first, her perfume cloying as she air-kissed my cheek. Caroline, dear, so good to see you. Still crunching numbers at that firm? Must be exhausting. Her tone dripped pity, eyes flicking to Ethan. And you, young man, med school, Not the top tier, but every doctor counts, right? She patted his arm condescendingly, rings cold against his sleeve. Ethan mumbled thanks, shifting weight, his ears reddening. I steered him to the appetizer table, plates clattering as I loaded cheese and crackers, whispering, Ignore it. But inside, anger simmered, my fork spearing an olive too forcefully. Uncle Phil chimed in next, clapping Dad on the back as he passed. Heard about the boys' acceptance? Backup plans better than no plan, eh? Laughter rippled from a cluster by the fireplace, glasses clinking in toast. Dad nodded, his chuckle rumbling. Exactly, we aim high in this family. Brandon sidled up, popping a shrimp into his mouth, chewing loudly. Yeah, Ethan, no shade, but my alma mater, they wouldn't even look at apps like yours. Posted about it online, got tons of likes. His thumb scrolled his phone, showing a post, a meme about settling for less, tagged with #family standards. Ethan's jaw clenched, fingers crumbling a cracker on his plate. I set mine down with a thud, heat rising in my neck. It's a great school, I said evenly, but Brandon waved it off. Sure, Aunt Caro, keep telling yourself that. The contempt escalated subtly, woven into every interaction. Mom pulled me aside to the kitchen, oven mitts on, stirring gravy with vigorous whisks. Why'd you invite drama with that message? Half the family's out, weather, they say. Her eyes accused, spoon scraping the pot. I leaned on the counter, arms crossed. Truth hurts, she huffed, turning away, cabinet door slamming. Back in the dining room, cousins whispered, glances darting our way. Poor Caroline, always the martyr, one murmured, loud enough to hear. Dad cornered Ethan by the tree, ornaments jingling as he gestured. Son, you could have aimed higher, we don't do mediocre. Ethan's shoulders hunched, lights reflecting in his eyes, hurt flickering. I intervened, hand on his back. He's done amazing. Dad snorted, walking off. Through it all I endured, smiles tight, responses clipped, my phone vibrating with more cancellations, now only a dozen guests left, table settings sparse. Micro-actions piled up. My fingers twisting a napkin under the table, Ethan's avoided eye contact, Brandon's constant smirks. The air thickened, tension palpable, but I held steady, knowing the real storm brewed in those unread messages. Dinner loomed, but this gauntlet? It only fueled my fire. As the appetizers dwindled on the platters, crumbs scattering across the side tables like remnants of civility, Mom clapped her hands sharply, her rings glinting under the chandelier lights. "Dinner's ready, everyone. Let's move to the table." The remaining guests, about a dozen now, their numbers thinned by the cancellations I'd triggered, shuffled toward the dining room, chairs scraping against the hardwood floor in uneven drags. I guided Ethan ahead of me, my hand lightly on his shoulder, feeling the tension in his muscles through his sweater. He glanced back, eyes questioning, but I just nodded forward, my own steps measured, boots leaving faint prints on the rug. The air carried the heavy scent of roasted turkey and gravy, but it did little to mask the undercurrent of unease rippling through the room. Phones buzzed intermittently in pockets, more messages likely pouring in, but no one acknowledged them yet. We took our seats, napkins unfolding with soft rustles, silverware clinking as place settings were adjusted. Dad sat at the head, carving knife in hand, his grip tight around the handle as he sliced into the bird, juices pooling on the platter. The conversation started innocently enough, passing bowls of mashed potatoes and green beans around the table, spoons clattering against ceramic. Aunt Rita complimented the stuffing, her fork spearing a bite, chewing slowly. "Delicious as always, Helen." Mom smiled tightly, her knife cutting into her portion with short, precise strokes, but the facade cracked quickly. Uncle Phil, seated across from Ethan, leaned forward, elbows on the table, his wineglass half raised. "So Ethan, tell us more about this med school. What's the name again? Not one of the big ones, right?" Ethan's fork paused mid-air, a piece of turkey dangling, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. "It's State University Medical Program," he said quietly, setting the fork down, his napkin twisting in his lap. Brandon next to him let out a low chuckle, covering it with a sip of water, ice cubes tinkling. "State? Yeah, heard they take anyone with a pulse these days." Snickers erupted from a couple of cousins down the table, their eyes darting away when I glared. I felt the heat build in my chest, my fingers gripping the edge of my plate, the porcelain cool and unyielding. "He's earned it," I interjected, voice firm, passing the rolls without looking up. Dad cleared his throat, knife setting down with a deliberate clink, wiping his mouth with his napkin slowly, folding it precisely before speaking. "Earned it? Caroline, let's be real. We've got standards in this family. Brandon here graduated top of his class at an Ivy, starting his own firm now. That's achievement." He gestured toward Brandon, who preened, straightening his collar with a smug tug. Ethan shrank in his chair, pushing food around his plate, fork scraping faintly. Mom nodded subtly, her eyes on her lap, avoiding mine. The table fell quieter, utensils slowing, the weight of Dad's words hanging like smoke. It escalated from there, each comment a step toward the precipice. Aunt Rita chimed in again, her voice sugary but edged. "Well, not everyone can be a star, dear, but a backup school, it's just underwhelming for Christmas talk." She dabbed her lips, lipstick smudging the napkin. Uncle Phil nodded vigorously, his chair creaking as he shifted. "Exactly. We don't want to bore the guests with mediocrity." More agreements murmured around the table, heads bobbing, glasses raised in half-toasts. Brandon pulled out his phone under the table, thumbs tapping, and I caught the glow, his post going live, the one mocking Ethan's subpar acceptance, hashtags like aim higher flashing briefly. Ethan's face paled, his hands disappearing under the table, knuckles likely white. My pulse hammered in my ears, breath shallow as I set my fork down carefully, the metal clicking against the plate. Dad leaned back, arms crossing over his chest, his chair groaning under the movement. "I've been thinking, Caroline, this isn't working. Ethan's situation reflects poorly on all of us. I said it before, and I'll say it now, uninvite him, he shouldn't be here." The words landed like a slap, the table going still, forks hovering, eyes widening. Mom gasped softly, hand to her mouth, but didn't contradict. Ethan froze, his eyes fixed on his plate, a flush creeping up his neck. Brandon smirked openly now, leaning in to whisper something to a cousin, laughter bubbling low. I stared at Dad, my vision narrowing, hands flat on the table to steady myself. "He's family," I said, each word clipped, my voice echoing in the sudden hush, but Dad pressed on, his voice rising, finger pointing across the table. "Family? We're cutting you both off. No more handouts, no more invites. You're disowned if you can't meet our level. Brandon's the future here, successful, visible. You're just the wallet." Gasps rippled now, chairs shifting uncomfortably, but no one intervened. Aunt Rita averted her eyes, fiddling with her earrings. Uncle Phil coughed, reaching for his wine, glass trembling slightly. Ethan's chair scraped as he pushed back an inch, his breathing audible, ragged. Brandon nodded emphatically, phone still in hand, likely refreshing likes on his post. Mom finally spoke, voice wavering. "Jim, maybe not now," but Dad waved her off, hand slicing the air. "Now's perfect, everyone's here, or what's left. Caroline's little stunt with those messages, pathetic, but it's done. You're out." The formal announcement hung there, raw and final. The room thick with silence, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator. I felt Ethan's leg bounce under the table, his shoe tapping mine accidentally. My nails pressed into the tablecloth, fabric bunching. This was it. The verdict they'd been building to, favoritism crystallized into rejection. But as hurt crashed over me, a cold clarity followed. My message had already sown the seeds. More phones vibrated, guests checking discreetly, faces paling as they read the group chat updates, more cancellations mid-dinner, excuses texted in real time. The prized gathering was crumbling, and they didn't even know the half yet. Ethan's eyes met mine, glistening, and I gave a subtle nod, my resolve locking in. This disownment, it was their undoing, not ours. The weight of Dad's words settled over the dining room like a suffocating blanket, the disownment echoing in the clinks of forgotten forks against plates and the awkward shifts in chairs. Ethan's face had drained of color, his hands now visible on the table, fingers interlaced so tightly his knuckles blanched white. I reached under the tablecloth, squeezing his knee briefly, my palm damp with sweat against his jeans. The remaining guests avoided eye contact, some staring into their wine glasses, swirling the liquid slowly, others pushing peas around their plates with deliberate scrapes. Brandon leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, a satisfied grin playing on his lips as he glanced at his phone, the screen lighting his face with a blue glow. Probably more likes rolling in on his mocking post. Mom fidgeted with her napkin, folding and refolding it in her lap, her eyes darting to Dad, pleading silently for a rewind that wouldn't come. The humiliation peaked there, in that frozen moment, my chest tight as if banded in iron, breaths coming short and shallow. But then my phone vibrated in my pocket, an insistent buzz that cut through the haze, followed by another, and another like a chorus demanding attention. I pulled it out slowly, hand steady despite the tremor inside, thumb unlocking the screen with a soft. Notifications flooded in, texts, not just from the group chat but individual ones now, pinging rapidly as if the dam had burst. The first was from Aunt Lisa, her message popping up. "Caroline, we just saw your note about Jim's words to Ethan. Appalling. We're turning around, won't be there. Hugs to you both." My eyes widened slightly, pulse quickening as I scrolled. Uncle Tom next. "Heard the full story, canceling our attendance. That's no way to treat family. Call if you need us." More followed, a cascade. Cousin Sarah, shocked, staying home. Great Aunt Evelyn, too toxic, not coming. Each one landed like a balm on the raw wound, but also a spark to the powder keg. I glanced around the table, noticing other phones lighting up, guests here checking their devices discreetly, brows furrowing as they read the spreading revelations. One cousin, Mark's wife, excused herself abruptly, chair scraping back, napkin dropping to the floor as she stepped into the hall, voice murmuring into her phone. The vibrations continued, my grip tightening on the device, case warm from the barrage. A call came through now, vibrating harder. Aunt Rita, who was sitting right across from me, her own phone in hand but ignored. I let it go to voicemail, but the transcript popped up seconds later. "Caroline, I got your message late, but good Lord, calling Ethan a loser and demanding he skip dinner? We're out. Tell Helen I'm sorry, but that's unacceptable." I set the phone face down on the table with a soft thud, but not before Dad noticed, his eyes narrowing. "What's that about?" he demanded, fork pointing accusatorily. I met his gaze levelly, my voice calm despite the storm inside. The truth spreading. Ethan's head lifted slightly, confusion mixing with the hurt in his eyes, his foot tapping nervously under the table, brushing mine. The messages didn't stop, they accelerated, each one a confirmation of the scale unfolding. Another text from a distant relative. Just read about the backup school nonsense in Brandon's post. Cruel. We're skipping. I pictured them all, scattered across states, reading my words from last night, the draft I'd agonized over now a viral truth in our family circle. The group chat exploded in my periphery, replies stacking, outrage, support, more cancellations. Only a handful left, one said. This ruins the whole thing. My heart raced, not with fear but a surging clarity. This was the external wave crashing in, revealing the power of my quiet stand. Brandon's smirk faltered as his own phone buzzed. He checked it, face pale. "What the? People are bailing because of your drama?" he hissed at me, thumbs flying to respond but too late. Mom stood halfway, hands wringing her apron. "What's happening?" she whispered, but Dad shushed her, leaning forward, face reddening. A key call pierced the din, my phone ringing aloud now, vibrating across the tablecloth toward the edge. It was Uncle Phil, who was still at the table but calling me. No wait, his brother, the one en route. I answered on speaker by accident, finger slipping, the voice booming out. "Caroline, Phil told me everything mid-drive, turning back, no part of that toxicity. Ethan's a good kid, proud of him." The room went pin-drop silent, utensils frozen, breaths held. Uncle Phil at the table coughed, shifting uncomfortably, his chair creaking. "I mentioned it," he admitted, avoiding Dad's glare. I ended the call with a tap, the screen going dark, but the impact lingered, hanging in the air like static. Ethan's eyes met mine again, a flicker of understanding dawning, his shoulders straightening just a fraction, fingers unclenching. The flood continued, my phone a beacon of change, each ping a nail in the coffin of their prized event. Texts from no-shows. "Solidarity with you. Can't support that behavior." I scrolled subtly, counting nearly all 24 invites now cancelled or absent, the table's empty seats a stark testament. Dad's face twisted, knife clattering to his plate as he stood, chair toppling backward with a crash. "You did this," he accused, finger jabbing. But I stayed seated, folding my hands, the cool wood grounding me. This wasn't just messages, it was the revelation, the true scale of their isolation exposed, my years of support withdrawn in a chorus of refusals. Ethan's hand found mine under the table, squeezing back, his grip tentative but strengthening. The humiliation that had peaked now flipped, their cruelty boomeranging. Mom buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking silently. Brandon typed furiously, deleting his post, perhaps damage control failing. The calls and texts tapered. But the change was irrevocable. This external storm had washed away the facade, leaving truth in its wake. For the first time, peace edged in, not from victory but from the shift. We weren't alone anymore. The last ping from my phone echoed faintly in the stunned dining room, the screen going dark as I placed it deliberately beside my plate, the case clicking against the wood. Dad's toppled chair lay askew on the floor, his face a mask of mottled red, veins bulging at his temples as he gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening. "What the hell have you done?" he snarled, voice low and gravelly, leaning forward like he might lunge. Mom's hands trembled as she lowered them from her face, tears streaking her makeup, her chair creaking as she shifted toward me. "Caroline, please, fix this, call them back." Brandon's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor under the table, his smug expression shattered into wide-eyed panic. He bent to retrieve it, banging his knee on the leg with a thud, muttering curses. The few remaining guests fidgeted, napkins twisted in laps, eyes darting between us like spectators at a crash. Ethan sat straighter now, his hands still in mine under the table, fingers loosening from their vice grip, a tentative strength returning. The air thickened with their scramble, a frantic energy buzzing as phones were checked anew, gasps escaping as the full extent hit, texts confirming the mass exodus, the prized gathering reduced to echoes in an emptying room. I stayed seated, folding my napkin slowly, the fabric crisp under my fingers, buying a moment to steady my breath. This was their stunned unraveling, the hypocrisy I'd endured for years now laid bare in real time. Dad paced a step, then another, his shoes scuffing the rug, hands raking through his thinning hair. "You poisoned them with lies. That message, it's twisted. I never called him a loser to hurt him, it's tough love. His voice cracked on the last word, but his eyes flashed denial, not remorse. Mom nodded frantically, reaching across the table, her arm knocking a water glass, liquid spilling in a slow pool. Exactly, honey, we just want the best for everyone. Brandon's success inspires, Ethan could learn from it. Brandon, back upright, rubbed his knee, face flushed. Yeah, Aunt Caro, it's not mocking, it's motivation. My post was just banter. People are overreacting because of you. He refreshed his feed, thumbs jabbing the screen, watching likes turn to angry comments, his posture slumping further. The scramble intensified, Dad snatching his own phone from his pocket, fingers fumbling the passcode twice before unlocking it, scrolling with jerky swipes. Aunt Lisa? Turning around mid-drive? Uncle Tom bailing? This is your fault, Caroline, your drama queen stunt. He slammed the device down, the thud reverberating, a fork jumping on a plate. Mom stood now, pacing to the window, peering out at the snow-covered driveway as if willing cars to appear. Her hands wringing the curtain fabric. The table's half empty already. What will people say? Our Christmas, ruined. Brandon joined the fray, typing responses in the group chat, his messages popping up on my screen too. Guys, it's a misunderstanding, come anyway. But replies flooded back, more declines, condemnations. No misunderstanding, cruelty. Supporting Caroline here. His face crumpled, phone set down with a defeated click, leaning back in his chair, arms hugging his chest. I watched it all unfold, my pulse steadying into a calm rhythm, the years of swallowed slights fueling this moment. When Dad turned back to me, pointing accusingly. Apologize. Call them. Say it was a joke. I finally stood, chair sliding back smoothly, no scrape or drama. Ethan rose with me, his hand slipping from mine but staying close, shoulder brushing my arm. No, I said simply, voice even, meeting Dad's glare. This isn't a joke, it's the truth you've hidden behind standards and favoritism. I gestured around the sparse table, empty seats glaring, plates half-eaten. I've paid for this, for your retirement, your bills, this dinner, for years, and in return, you dismiss Ethan, mock him publicly. I nodded to Brandon, who averted his eyes, fingers drumming nervously on the table. Your golden boy posts online shade while you demand I uninvite my son. That's not family, that's hypocrisy. Mom gasped, hand to her chest, staggering back a step, the curtain slipping from her grasp. We love you both, it's just… Brandon achieves so visibly. Dad interrupted, voice booming. Visible? Ethan's backup school embarrasses us. We can't have losers at our table. The word hung again, raw, and Ethan's flinch was subtle, his jaw tightening, but he didn't look away. I stepped forward around the table, my boots soft on the rug. There it is, the truth. You call him a loser? Demand he stays away, while I fund your life. But look around, your prized gathering? Cancelled because others see the toxicity I enabled too long. Guests murmured now, one standing to leave, coat draped over arm, door clicking open in the hall. Brandon tried to interject, voice whiny. Aunt Caro, delete the message, we can salvage. But I cut him off, calm still. No, your post mocking him? That's salvageable? Years of ignoring our wins while celebrating your every step? No more. The exposure flowed from me, not yelled but stated plainly, each word a deliberate peel of their facade. Dad deflated slightly, sinking into a chair, hands covering his face. You broke us? Mom sobbed quietly, tissues pulled from her pocket, dabbing eyes. Brandon stared at his lap, phone forgotten, the scramble halting into defeated silence. I turned to Ethan, nodding toward the door. We're leaving. He grabbed his coat from the hook, zipper rasping up, his movements sure now. I paused at the threshold, looking back. This isn't revenge, it's boundaries. If you want family, earn it without the cruelty. Dad's head lifted, eyes wet, but no words came. Mom reached out, arm dropping midway. Brandon muttered, whatever, but his voice cracked. We stepped into the cold night, snow crunching underfoot, the door shutting behind us with a final click. The driveway stretched empty, no cars arriving, the house lights dimming in our wake. Ethan exhaled, breath fogging, his hand finding mine again. Mom. Thank you. I squeezed back, starting the car, engine humming to life. As we drove away, the rearview mirror showed the house shrinking, their hypocrisy left exposed in the ruins. Peace settled, not from their scramble, but from my exit, powerful, final, the cycle snapped at last. The car's tires hummed steadily on the snow-dusted highway as we left my parents' house behind, the glow of their porch lights fading in the rearview mirror until it was just a pinpoint in the darkness. Ethan's silhouette was quiet beside me. His head leaned against the window, breath fogging the glass in rhythmic puffs. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally adjusting the heater vents. Warm air whispering through the cabin to chase away the chill that wasn't just from the winter night. The radio played soft carols, volume low, but neither of us sang along. Instead, a comfortable silence wrapped around us, broken only by the occasional swish of wipers clearing fresh flurries. My mind replayed the dinner's chaos, the empty seats, Dad's sputtering rage, Mom's tear-streaked pleas, Brandon's deflated sulk, but it felt distant already, like a storm past. In its place, a quiet gratitude bloomed for the allies who'd shown up in texts and calls, their support a lifeline pulling us towards something real. As the miles ticked by, my phone buzzed again in the cup holder, screen lighting with a message from Aunt Lisa, "Headed your way if you'll have us. No toxic vibes here." I glanced at Ethan, his eyes reflecting dashboard lights. "What do you say to some company?" We arrived home just past midnight, the house dark but welcoming, our footprints, the first to mar the fresh snow on the walkway. I unlocked the door with a jingle of keys, the lock clicking open, and flipped on the hall light, its warm glow spilling into the living room. Ethan kicked off his boots, snow clumps melting on the mat, and headed straight for the couch, sinking into it with a sigh, his sweater rumpled from the drive. I hung our coats, the hangers rattling softly, and checked my phone, more messages stacking. Uncle Tom confirming he'd swing by with leftovers from his own quiet meal, Cousin Sarah offering to video call if roads were bad. The contrast hit me then, sharp as the cold air still clinging to my skin. Back there, biological ties had twisted into chains of judgment, but here, chosen connections wove a safety net of genuine care. I texted back invitations, fingers tapping quickly, then joined Ethan, perching on the armrest, my hand ruffling his hair lightly. "You okay?" He nodded, a small smile cracking. "Better now." The doorbell rang 20 minutes later, a cheerful chime cutting through the quiet, and I opened it to Aunt Lisa, her arms laden with a foil-covered dish and a bottle of wine, snowflakes dusting her scarf. "Merry Christmas, properly this time," she said, stepping in with a hug that squeezed the breath from me, her coat brushing mine as I took the dish, smelled like her famous apple crisp, still warm. Uncle Tom followed close behind, stomping boots on the mat, his cheeks ruddy from the cold, carrying a thermos of hot cocoa and a stack of board games under his arm. "Couldn't let you two celebrate alone after that mess," he grumbled, but his eyes twinkled as he clapped Ethan on the back, the thud solid and affectionate. Cousin Sarah arrived last, her car pulling up with headlights sweeping the yard, bundled in a parka, toting a playlist on her phone and a bag of snacks. "Video call wasn't enough. I braved the roads," she laughed, kicking snow from her shoes, the door shutting behind her with a soft thud. We gathered in the living room, the space feeling fuller than its size, couches pushed back to make room around the coffee table. I lit the fireplace, matches scratching against the box, flames crackling to life and casting dancing shadows on the walls. Ethan helped distribute mugs, steam rising from the cocoa as he poured carefully, marshmallows bobbing on top. Aunt Lisa uncovered the crisp half, the cinnamon scent mingling with the wood smoke, spoons clinking as we dished portions onto plates. No formal table here, just laps and laughter, the toxic precision of the earlier dinner a world away. Uncle Tom dealt cards for a game, his fingers shuffling with practiced flicks, the deck whispering. "None of that high-stakes nonsense," he said, winking at Ethan. "Just fun. You in, Doctor-B?" Ethan's shoulders relaxed, cards fanning in his hand. A genuine chuckle escaping as he peeked at his hand. The warmth built in small moments, contrasting the biological chill we'd fled. Where Dad's demands had sliced like knives, here compliments flowed freely. Aunt Lisa leaned forward, plate balanced on her knee, fork gesturing. "Ethan, that med school? It's solid. I looked it up, great program for hands-on work. You're gonna save lives, kid." Her voice was earnest, eyes locking on his, no backhanded edge. Ethan blushed, setting his mug down with a clink, fingers tracing the rim. "Thanks, it means a lot." Cousin Sarah pulled up her phone, screen glowing as she showed an article she'd saved. "See? Alumni doing big things. Forget the backup crap, that's just jealousy talking." She scrolled slowly, thumb pausing on highlights, the light reflecting in Ethan's widening eyes. Uncle Tom nodded, cards slapping down in play. Your grandpa's wrong, plain and simple. Success isn't about labels, it's grit. You've got that in spades. Laughter punctuated the game, my own bubbling up as Uncle Tom groaned over a bad draw, his hand slapping his forehead dramatically. Rigged, Caroline, you stacked the deck. I shook my head, cards hidden behind my mug, the steam warming my nose. The fire popped, embers glowing, and for the first time that day, tension melted from my neck, shoulders dropping as I sank deeper into the cushions. This was family. Chosen, not obligated, where Ethan's achievement sparked pride, not scorn. Brandon's online mockery? Forgotten in Sarah's stories of her own backup career path that led to joy. Mom's passive enabling, replaced by Lisa's fierce hugs, her arm around Ethan now, pulling him close. We're proud, you hear? Don't let them dim you. As the night wore on, plates emptied, crumbs brushed away with napkins, the conversation softened into shared memories, good ones, untainted by favoritism. Ethan opened up, voice steadier, describing his med school dreams, hands animating the air. Allies listened, heads nodding, no interruptions or judgments. I watched, heart full, the contrast stark. Biological bonds had demanded perfection, but these chosen ones offered acceptance. The clock ticked past 2, yawns creeping in, but no one rushed to leave. Uncle Tom stacked the cards neatly, box closing with a snap. Best Christmas in years. Hugs goodbye lingered at the door, cold air sneaking in, promises of more gatherings exchanged. As they drove off, taillights fading, Ethan and I stood on the porch, snow falling softly. This is what it should be, he said, arm around my shoulders. I nodded, peace settling deep, the toxic dinner a shadow, this warmth the light. We lingered on the porch a moment longer. The snowflakes drifting lazily under the streetlight, Ethan's arms still draped around my shoulders in that casual, protective way he'd picked up. The taillights of Cousin Sarah's car vanished around the corner, leaving the night hushed, save for the faint crunch of settling snow. I exhaled a long breath, watching it cloud in the air, the warmth from inside seeping out through the open door behind us. Let's get in before we freeze, I said, nudging him gently, my hand on the knob as we stepped back into the house, the door clicking shut with a solid thud. The living room still held the echoes of laughter, empty mugs scattered on the coffee table, crumbs from the apple crisp dotting plates, the fire, now embers, glowing faintly in the grate. Ethan flopped onto the couch, stretching out with a yawn, his socks mismatched from the hurried packing earlier. I gathered the dishes, plates, clinking softly as I stacked them, carrying the load to the kitchen sink, water running warm over my hands as I rinsed. But even in that mundane task, the aftermath loomed, the texts and calls from my parents that I knew would come, the pleas and accusations testing my fresh resolve. Morning light crept in early, filtering through the kitchen blinds in slanted beams as I brewed coffee, the machine percolating with its familiar gurgle. Ethan slept in, the house quiet, but my phone on the counter buzzed intermittently, screen lighting with notifications I'd muted last night. I sipped from my mug, the steam curling up, thumb hovering over the unlock button before swiping. Messages from Mom first. Caroline, call me, we need to talk. Then Dad, this isn't over, you owe us an explanation. Brandon's was curt. Uncled the post, happy now? I set the mug down with a clink, leaning against the counter, the granite cool under my elbows. The aftermath wasn't a tidal wave, but a persistent drip, each ping a reminder of the boundaries I had to build now, brick by brick. No more automatic responses, no guilt-fueled concessions. I drafted a reply in my mind, fingers tracing the phone's edge, but didn't send yet. This was about rules, not reaction. The first call came mid-morning as I wiped down the counters, sponge squeezing suds into the sink. Mom's name flashed, I let it ring twice, heart thumping before answering on speaker, setting the phone on the island. Hello? My voice was neutral, cloth pausing mid-swipe. Caroline, thank God, last night was a disaster. Your father, he didn't mean it like that. Her words tumbled out, laced with sniffles, the background faint with Dad's muttering. I straightened, folding the sponge neatly, placing it by the faucet. He meant exactly that, calling Ethan a loser, disowning us, that's not a slip. Silence stretched, her breathing audible, then a sigh. But family, we've always worked through things. Come over, let's fix it. My fingers drummed lightly on the counter, a steady rhythm grounding me. No, Mom, things change now. I'm setting boundaries. She pressed, voice rising slightly. Boundaries? After all we've been through? You supported us because you wanted to. I glanced out the window, snow melting in patches on the lawn. I supported you out of love, but it wasn't reciprocal. No more money, no more enabling the favoritism. Dad grabbed the phone then, his voice booming through the speaker. You think you can just cut us off? After everything? That dinner was our tradition. You ruined it. His anger crackled, but I didn't flinch, wiping a stray drop from the counter with my sleeve. You ruined it with your words. If you want contact, it starts with an apology to Ethan. Real one, no excuses, and respect his achievements. He huffed, the line rustling as if he paced. Apologize? For truth? Brandon's the success story. I cut in, voice firm. Brandon's path isn't the only one. Until you see that, calls like this, they'll go unanswered. The call ended with Mom's pleading, wait. But I hung up, thumb pressing the red icon decisively, the screen going dark. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my coffee, the mug warm again in my palms but a weight lifted. First, boundary set, like a gate locking. Ethan wandered in then, rubbing sleep from his eyes, hair tousled. Who was that? He poured cereal, bowl clattering on the counter, milk splashing. I told him briefly, spoon stirring his flakes, his brow furrowed but he nodded. Good. They need to earn it back. We ate in companionable silence, the crunch of cereal punctuating, my phone staying quiet for now. But the drip continued. Texts from extended relatives, some supportive, others probing for gossip. I responded selectively, fingers typing measured words. Thanks for understanding, we're focusing on positive now. Brandon called next, mid-afternoon, as I folded laundry in the living room, warm fabrics piling on the couch. I answered, stacking towels with one hand. What? His tone was whiny, background noise of traffic suggesting he drove. Aunt Caro, come on, delete the group message, people are unfollowing me. I smoothed a shirt, the cotton soft under my fingers. No, your actions have consequences. Mocking Ethan online? That's on you. He groaned, horn honking faintly. It was a joke. Family teases. I set the shirt down, voice steady. Not like that. New rule, no contact unless it's respectful, and apologized to him directly. He hung up, muttering, the line beeping dead. Evening brought more. Dad emailing a long rant which I read standing by the window, curtains drawn against the darkening sky. Accusations of betrayal, demands for repayment, ironic given the flow of money. I archived it without replying, fingers swiping dismissively. Mom tried again via text, photos of past Christmases, sentimental bait. I viewed them, thumb scrolling, memories flickering, but didn't engage. Instead, I blocked their numbers temporarily, a digital wall, the action simple but profound, screen confirming with a pop-up. Ethan watched from the couch, remote in hand. Harsh? I sat beside him, cushions sinking. Necessary, boundaries protect us. Through it all, I handled the aftermath methodically, each interaction a reinforcement. Answering only on my terms, stating rules clearly. No financial aid, no uninvited visits, apologies required for rebuilding. Allies checked in. Aunt Lisa calling supportively, her voice warm over the line as I paced the kitchen, cordless phone to ear. You're doing right, she said, and I nodded to myself, hand adjusting the blind slats. By nightfall, the house felt fortified, boundaries like invisible shields. Ethan and I shared pizza, boxes open on the coffee table, grease-spotting napkins. Feels weird but good, he admitted, slice folding in his hand. I agreed, biting into mine, cheese stringing. The phone stayed silent now, my rules echoing in the quiet, the aftermath not a battle but a steady build of self-preservation, cycle truly broken. The pizza boxes lay crumpled on the coffee table, grease stains blooming on the cardboard like abstract art, as Ethan and I leaned back on the couch, the TV flickering with a holiday movie we'd muted halfway through. His feet propped up on the ottoman, toes wiggling in socks, while I nursed a glass of water, ice cubes clinking softly against the sides. The house felt settled now, the boundaries I'd erected not walls of isolation but frameworks for growth. Spaces where positivity could take root, without the weeds of toxicity choking it out. That night, as Ethan dozed off mid-scene, head lolling to the side, I slipped my laptop from the side table, screen glowing blue in the dim room, no more defining myself through their lens. The reliable daughter, the invisible supporter. My decisiveness in exposing their cruelty wasn't an end, it was a launchpad. I opened a blank document, fingers hovering over keys, then began typing. Ideas for mentoring young professionals like Ethan, sharing stories of backup paths that led to fulfillment. This was reclaiming my legacy, not with revenge's sharp edges, but with impacts that rippled outward, redefining what our family name could mean on my terms. Morning came, with sunlight slanting through the blinds, casting golden stripes on the kitchen floor as I scrambled eggs, pan sizzling, spatula scraping the non-stick surface. Ethan shuffled in, pouring orange juice, glass thumping on the counter. "What's the plan today?" he asked, forking eggs onto his plate, steam rising. I sat across from him at the island, napkin unfolding in my lap. Starting something new, a blog maybe, about overcoming family expectations, celebrating non-traditional successes. His eyebrows raised, chewing thoughtfully, swallow audible. "Like my med school?" I nodded, buttering toast with smooth strokes. "Exactly, and others. I'll use my accounting skills to help too. Free advice for kids from tough homes." He grinned, setting his fork down with a clink. "Cool, I could help with the med angle." That spark in his eyes mirrored my own growing fire. This wasn't just healing, it was building, turning pain into purpose without the shadow of my parents' approval. I spent the afternoon at my desk, the home office cluttered with stacks of old files from work but now repurposed. Laptop open, I designed a simple website, mouse clicking through templates, fingers typing domain ideas, carolinelegacy.com, no, too on the nose. reclaimpath.com. Purchase confirmed with a swipe of my card, the transaction beeped swift. Content flowed next, my first post detailing Ethan's journey anonymized slightly, focusing on grit over prestige. "Success isn't a pedigree, it's persistence," I wrote. Keys clacking rhythmically, backspacing over awkward phrases until it felt raw but empowering. I wove in my story subtly. Years funding a family that dismissed us, but emphasized the pivot, breaking free to foster real support. Images uploaded, a stock photo of a path diverging, then one of Ethan studying, his face blurred for privacy, lamp casting a warm halo. Publish button hovered under my cursor. I clicked, the page refreshing with the post live. Sharing it on my socials felt vulnerable, thumb pausing before posting, but I did. To LinkedIn, Facebook groups for parents of aspiring doctors. Notifications trickled in, likes, comments like "needed this today," hearts accumulating. The positive impact started small but snowballed, my phone dinging with emails as I walked the dog later, leash tugging in my hand, paws padding through melting snow. A high schooler messaged, "Your post hit home, my folks want Ivy or bust." I replied while sitting on a park bench, wood slats cold through my jeans, offering virtual coffee chats. Another from a colleague, "Inspiring, can I share?" Yes, and it spread. By evening, views hit hundreds, my inbox filling with stories mirroring mine, favoritism, dismissals, triumphs despite. I scheduled sessions, calendar app beeping as slots filled, mentoring on resumes, financial planning for independence. This was reclaiming the family name, not as social climbers like my parents envisioned, but as beacons for the overlooked. No golden boys here, just real people forging ahead. Ethan joined in, his enthusiasm fueling mine. Over dinner, salad bowls, forks spearing lettuce, we brainstormed. "Add a section for med school apps," he suggested, dressing drizzling from the bottle. I noted it on my phone, screen smudged with vinaigrette. He volunteered to guest write, his laptop pulled over, typing drafts while I washed dishes, water rushing, suds bubbling. "Mom, this could help so many," he said, hitting save. I dried my hands on a towel, fabric rough, leaning over his shoulder. His words captured the sting of rejection, but flipped it to motivation, ending with, "Backup isn't failure, it's your foundation." Pride swelled, my hand squeezing his shoulder, muscles firm under my palm. As days blurred into a week, the initiative grew. I hosted a webinar from my office, webcam light on, notes scribbled on a pad beside me. 20 attendees logged in, faces in grid view, mics unmuting for questions. "How do you handle family pushback?" one asked, voice tinny through speakers. I shared honestly, boundaries, selective sharing, my mouse highlighting slides with bullet points. Feedback poured post-session, empowering, changed my perspective. Donations trickled for a scholarship fund I started, bank app confirming transfers aimed at backup school applicants. This positive wave reclaimed what my parents had tainted, their name now associated with uplift, not exclusion, through articles I pitched to local blogs, emails sent with attachments clicking. One evening, as snow fell anew outside the window, flakes sticking to panes, I reflected while updating the site, cursor blinking. My decisiveness had fostered this, a community where achievements shone without comparison. Ethan peeked in, holding hot cocoa mugs steaming. "Site looks great." We clinked mugs, chocolate scent wafting, and talked futures. His med classes, my expanding outreach. No toxic elements lingered. I'd redefined family as chosen support, legacy as impact. Calls from mom when ignored, her voicemails deleted with a swipe. But here, positivity thrived. A new email, partnership offer from a nonprofit. Accept? Yes, this was my terms, building up, not tearing down, the name Caroline carried now synonymous with resilience. The cursor blinked steadily on my screen. The blog post draft glowing in the quiet of my home office, where the only sounds were the faint hum of the computer fan and the occasional creak of the house settling in the winter night. Ethan's draft contribution sat open in a tab beside mine, his words about turning backup into breakthrough still fresh from our dinner discussion. But now, as the clock ticked past midnight, solitude wrapped around me like a familiar blanket. I leaned back in my chair, the leather sighing under my weight, fingers interlacing behind my head as I stared at the ceiling, its faint cracks spiderwebbing like old veins. This moment of reflection wasn't planned. It crept in uninvited, pulling me from the momentum of building this new legacy into a deeper well of self-examination. My eyes drifted to the window, where snowflakes tapped gently against the pane, melting into rivulets that distorted the streetlight outside. The peace I'd chased through exposure and boundaries now demanded I face its source, not in the ruins of their dinner or the growth of my outreach, but within myself, where worth had always resided, waiting to be claimed without external stamps. I stood slowly, joints popping softly in the hush, and paced to the bookshelf, my socks whispering over the carpet. Fingers trailed along spines, old accounting texts from my early career, photo albums gathering dust, a framed picture of Ethan as a toddler, his grin toothless and pure. I picked it up, glass cool under my thumb, tracing his chubby cheeks. How many times had I measured my value by their approval? Years of checks written, nods accepted as currency for belonging, only to realize it was fool's gold. The realization deepened as I set the frame down with a soft click, turning to the mirror on the wall. My reflection shadowed but clear. Lines around my eyes, not just from age but from clenching against slights, now softened in the low light. I touched my face, fingertips pressing lightly into skin, feeling the pulse beneath, steady, independent. This wasn't about them anymore. The spark lit by Dad's cruelty had burned away the illusions, leaving a core truth. My worth wasn't tethered to their validation or even my retaliation's success. The internal shift unfolded layer by layer, my mind wandering back through the day's micro-moments, each a thread in this tapestry of self-validation. Earlier, replying to a mentee's email, my keys had tapped with confidence, no second-guessing if it measured up to Brandon's flash. Now alone, doubt's ghosts whispered, had I been too harsh, ruining their holiday forever? But I countered them, stepping to the desk, hand hovering over the mouse before clicking refresh on the site stats. Views climbing, comments like, "Your story freed me" stacking up. Not for glory, but proof. Impact born from authenticity, not appeasement. I sank back into the chair, elbows on the armrests, chin resting on folded hands, breath slow and even. The peace settled heavier, a warm weight in my chest as I acknowledged the cycle's break, not just for Ethan, but for me. No more internal scorekeeping, no weighing sacrifices against their indifference. My actions, from that overheard demand to the message sent, were validations of self-respect, not vengeance. Emotions surfaced raw through small actions, my fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the desk, wood thumping faintly, syncing with my heartbeat calming from its earlier race. A tear welled, not from sadness but release, blinking it away as it trailed warm down my cheek, wiped with the back of my hand. I thought of Mom's unanswered texts, Dad's silenced rants, their absence no longer a void but space for growth. Ethan's pride in our project, his hug before bed, arms tight and brief, had mirrored this, worth affirmed in mutual support, not hierarchical praise. The realization crystallized here in this solitary room, the snow's patter a gentle underscore. I wasn't the glue holding a broken family, I was whole on my own, my value intrinsic, forged in endurance and now blooming in freedom. I powered down the laptop, screen fading to black with a soft whir, standing to stretch, arms reaching overhead, vertebrae popping in sequence. The house slept around me, Ethan's door closed upstairs, but the quiet amplified my internal harmony. No regrets echoing, just acceptance. Slipping into bed later, sheets cool against my skin, I pulled the comforter up, fabric rustling, and lay staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin. Peace wasn't euphoric. It was this stillness. The absence of striving for their nod. My breath deepened, eyelids heavy as the final piece locked in. Breaking the cycle meant validating myself first, a quiet revolution that outshone any gathering sparkle. Sleep came easy, dreams untroubled, the realization a anchor. My worth, internal and unshakable, the truest peace I'd found. Have you ever felt trapped in a family dynamic where your efforts go unnoticed and one harsh word finally pushes you to stand up? That's where I was, overhearing my father's cruelty toward my son Ethan, and deciding enough was enough. By sharing the truth with our extended family, I watched their prized Christmas unravel, but more importantly, I broke free from years of toxic favoritism. It wasn't easy, the backlash, the pleas, but it led me to rebuild with genuine allies and create something positive, like my mentoring outreach. Proving worth isn't about elite achievements, but real resilience. If you've got a similar story of breaking cycles or setting boundaries, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you found your peace. It might inspire someone else scrolling through. So what do you think? Did I go too far, or not far enough? Drop a comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of empowerment and turning pain into power. Remember, your value isn't defined by others' approval. It's in your choices to protect what matters. Stand strong. You've got this.